Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Big Bros Podcast, episode 57 today. My name is Jeremy. Welcome if it's your first time joining us. I'm joined by my lovely friend and co-host, Ilan. How you going, mate?
I'm good, mate. I'm feeling way more energized than I was last week, even though I drank way more than last week.
Well, that's different. And, we were out again over the weekend together and saying, far out, mate. Like this is going against a bit of our normal talk about, drinking and doing things in moderation. It hasn't really been moderation for us the last few weeks, has it? I think it's just been the flavor of the month. April has just been bloody stir crazy for us. We've had birthdays left, right, and center. We've had shindigs every weekend, but you don't get it every time, every weekend during the year. So let's just lap it up and enjoy it. And if that means being a little bit sloppy at times, so be it.
I agree. Look, it's like AFL gather round. It comes around once a year. Let's just enjoy it for what it is. I would argue we're still being, we're moderate with our drinking. We're still keeping healthy.
Yes.
We're still working. We're still studying. We're still doing all the things necessary to have a healthy lifestyle. But you know what? It's the festival of birthdays. It's the festival of the sun out. Let's just enjoy it like everyone's enjoying AFL gather round.
Exactly.
So,
well, the last little bit of sun, because it is slowly going, and
so soak it up.
Even more so, exactly. We just want to soak it up, get those last few tanning sessions, slow roasting sessions in, beach days. But lap it up whilst we can, because soon these cold months are going to come around and the conversations are going to turn.
Exactly. And one of those conversations that tend to come a little bit more as, it starts getting darker earlier, so you're confronted with your own intrusive thoughts. And one of those thoughts
spikes a bit.
Yeah, cortisol spikes a bit. And, last week, me and you were at our good mate Sterling's house. Shout out Sterling on his 1 week on, 1 week off fly in, fly out job. We were chatting about our late 20s, and we started chatting about the fact that, both of us, we're 24, Sterling's 23. And, I blink. Yesterday I was 19 and today I'm 24. Time flies quickly.
And I think as soon as that conversation came up, we actually turned to each other and said, wait, why the fuck are we already talking about our late 20s? Like, we are early to mid 20s. Why the fuck are we talking about our late 20s already? And we were all like, yeah, like, why? But it's because it's weirdly on our minds. And if it's on our minds, no doubt it's on your guys' minds as well. I'm sure if you're listening to this and you're around the same age as us. And I think there's reason to it, and it's warranted as well to be on our minds to an extent. So let's talk about it, because once we spoke about it with Sterling, I personally felt a lot more at ease with it afterwards. I don't know if you felt the same, but I certainly did.
I did, for sure, because I'm someone who really ruminates a lot, and I think about things a lot more than I probably should. And I think knowing that we were all on the same page, even though all of our lives are at different points, the thought of our late 20s, the fact that it's kind of creeping up on us, it did put me at ease knowing that everyone's kind of on the same page. But I think for me, what kind of started sparking this thought is the fact that, yeah, again, time flies quickly. That's the first thought. But number two, I'm on the tail end of finishing my uni degree. So I've studied this is my 6th year of studying. So I'm in my 5th year of my kind of psych degree, you could say. And I'm on the tail end of finishing something that's been a really long endeavor. And for you as well, you've just finished physio. So for us, we've just finished the first rite of passage of, you could say, adulthood, right? And I think when you think about that and you think, wow, like I thought uni would feel like a longer time span, and it's not. And yeah, it's long, but it doesn't feel like it took an eternity. It starts creeping up on you, being like, shit, 5 years ago I was 19. In 5 years' time, I'm going to be 29. And 5 years ago, bro, that feels really recent. Like, I remember going to clubs, like those 18-year-old clubs, buying a bottle of vodka and splitting it with a friend and having it with Red Bull. Like, I remember that so vividly. And to think that recent feeling, I'm going to be feeling that when I'm 29, looking back when I'm 24, that's an insane feeling. It's confronting, though.
Yeah, that point you make there at the end was maybe the point that made me feel a lot more comfortable about this, was the fact that, like, I'm 24 now, 5 years time I'm 29, but when I am 29, I'm going to be thinking fuck, wish I was 24 again. So it's that mid stage. It's not where we're not at the end of the 20s. We need to remind ourselves that yes, we are just still in our early to mid 20s now specifically. So it's not all doom and gloom just yet. But why we were talking about this and why this is on our minds, I feel, especially as guys, is because I feel like now that we are in that transitional stage, we've finished uni, we're now working full-time jobs, we're making our big boy money, and we are, we're in the workforce. We can't help but think this is career now, this is life now in a sense, and we want to set ourselves up to feel comfortable for when we get to those later years of our 20s, going into our early 30s. And we feel like that setup is starting now. Like these are the moments, these are the first foundational years for career development that will set us up for when we're in our later 20s to make us feel a little bit more at ease then. And that's why I think I was freaking out a bit, you were freaking out a bit, and we were thinking far out like, yeah, these are the years where shit needs to be happening for us. But with that being said, you also did raise a point as well when we were thinking of our other mates, and you said, which was really interesting, you said, you know what though, like everyone's timeline is kind of different. My timeline might not be the same as your timeline, which might not be the same as someone else's timeline. My goal might be, have a house by the age of 30, hopefully be in a formidable relationship, hopefully looking to have like first child by like the early 30s. That might be my timeline. Maybe for me, maybe not for you. And that was also a really comforting point, is that, you know what, like we shouldn't just feel like everything is set in stone and timelines stay this way, because time and time again, we see that people do things on their own accord, but you also need to do things on your own accord with a bit of a plan. You can't just freeball it and wing everything you do in these years at the same time.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And the reason I raise the point that everyone's got a different timeline is because life will throw curveballs at you. So even if you and I have a set plan, let's say make X amount of money in the next 4 years, have X sort of career progression, marry X person and have kids by X time. Bro, the fact of the matter is we can have a plan, and God, whether you believe in God or not, the universe, so be it, there could be something that's thrown at you, something tragic potentially, God forbid, of course. But at the same time, you can't predict the future. But what you can do is have a general plan to work towards and make yourself, in a way, embrace that uncertainty. Because yeah, look, I think there's nothing wrong with having fun in your 20s, but I think there's also needs to be a balance with actually setting up that foundation. So, you know what? The reality is we're all social creatures. We're all going to want to settle down and have a family at a certain point. And yeah, life is very unpredictable. So things can come along this journey of life, and it might derail us. So I think the key thing here is embrace uncertainty and understand you've got a different timeline to someone else, because the curveballs that might, impact me aren't going to necessarily impact you. So I think you've got to account for that. But even though we can't predict that, you're right, we can still start having a direction. You can still have some sort of journey, right? Like if I'm driving from A to B, I still have a direction of where I want to get to. But that doesn't mean that there might be a car accident on the way and I have a bit of a road rage incident because someone's going 30 in a 50 zone.
Yeah, it's unpredictable, and you know that once you get to that, you're going to have to pass that, and you're not going to be held up in the traffic for too long.
Correct.
You might be held up for a little bit, but you'll eventually get past it, right? And I love that analogy, mate. It's great. I think we were talking as guys mainly about career and relationships as our key points as to what's freaking us the fuck out about our later 20s. Do you think that they intertwine?
For sure. They definitely intertwine. Well, it's a bi-directional relationship. So as a guy, a lot of things that help you attracting a good mate is having things that you...
Mate meaning
a potential partner. But you love my evolutionary psych terms, don't you?
Mating psychology.
Yeah, the mating psychology, exactly. But truthfully, you want to have something going for you. You want to have stability. You want to have a good job. You want to have something that can signal to that other person that if we have kids together, I have enough resources to ensure that we survive. We survive the treacherous journey that is life. I've got enough money that can put food on the table. I have enough money that we have really good shelter. I have enough money and stability that I can support our kids going to a good school. And the reality of that situation is it could be a great driving force, a great motivator for guys especially to become disciplined, to become really good at what they do. So they have some sort of value in this world. And by value, I mean, being good at a job where you can do good things, where you're sought after, where your skills and your traits are something that creates value for the world around you. People pay a lot of good money for that. And if you can signal that to potential mates, you're going to increase your chances of meeting someone who would want to settle down with you. So that's really important on its own, but it's also just a motivator in that you're going to be more willing to work hard. It's going to be more willing when you tell yourself like, okay, I'm not just working hard for myself, but I'm working hard for the fact that in 10 years, I want to have enough money in the account that I can have a deposit on a house, that I can have enough money to, put food on the table, not just for myself and my future wife, but for my future children as well.
It puts that fire under the ass for us as a guy, which I think is healthy.
I think it's great. And
we need that fire under the ass.
For sure. And just the last point I want to make there as well is that there's nothing wrong with necessarily having fun in your 20s and,
Mate, you need to.
You need to have fun in your 20s. But I think there needs to be also a set time where you're like, all right,
Time to knuckle down a bit.
the things I do when I'm not necessarily traveling or having fun, these are the things I'm doing. I need to be putting in the foundation work to ensure that by the time I'm 28, 29, I have something to show for it. And guess what? Even if you were to start at 28, 29, it wouldn't be too late. But the earlier, the better.
Yeah, and knowing when to do things here versus when away is important. Something that I like to kind of tell myself as a bit of a mantra is like, when in Rome. And when in Rome meaning that like, you know what? I'm on holiday now. Now is the time where I can be a little bit calm on myself and not as hard on myself and let loose a bit. Whether that means a couple extra drinks on a night out, whether that means, having something to eat that maybe I wouldn't normally, it's when in Rome, it's on holiday, it's treat yourself. And that is, I think, very healthy for me personally to employ because it makes me feel like I've actually earned what I'm doing in that moment. Holidays don't come all that often. Like I will work my fucking ass off when I'm here in Melbourne, whether it was, whilst I was at uni and academically studying, working my ass off then, or now as a full-time physiotherapist worker, I'll be working my ass off here now. So when those holidays do come around, allow yourself to have that fun still. And that's healthy. It's what allows you to still feel like a kid in a way. And I think that's important because like you said, we are only 24. We're not old farts yet. We're 24. These are the young years. And if we were to just be so fixed in our minds of trying to like make that money, make that bread up and always thinking about the long-term approach to being 30, we're just going to run ourselves into the wall and hate what we're doing currently, which is recipe for disaster.
It's so true. And I'm glad you brought that up. You got to have some sort of fun, even when you're in your late 20s. And the reason I think that's so important, the thing is, as you get older, the more time the time that you spend with your family obviously increases. So like your wife and your potential kids, and the time you spend with your friends decreases. So you got to be putting in more conscious effort to, maintain those social relationships. I was chatting with my brother and he's turning 30 this year. He's engaged and, he's going to be settling down soon. But one thing that he's done in the last few years in his later 20s, he's got a great job. He's got a great lifestyle. He lives overseas. And he's loving life. But what he does really well is he maintains those... He still makes active effort to travel. And even though he's dislocated from his friends geographically, as an example, he's going away to Scandinavia to go hiking with his mates. Just because you're in your late 20s, and look, I'm not spouting this to someone who's in my late 20s, but I can at least draw from, my older brother's experience that just because you're in your late 20s doesn't mean that fun time is over. Sure, you might have more serious responsibility, but it doesn't mean that you have to completely just be the most boring person in the world. It doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice all your happiness. What it does mean, though, is that, you might have to knuckle down and you might have to be a bit more serious with where your money goes and, how you spend your time. But assuming you're organized with how much, you're organized with making that time to travel, seeing your friends, that's probably the healthiest way to, have a sustainable life where, sure, you're disciplined and you have those periods of monk mode, but you also have those periods where, you can let loose a little bit.
And I think that's what we're kind of starting to feel more so, is being more intentional with the things that we didn't really need to be so intentional with prior. Like when we were 19, 20, we could go to a club every weekend and stay out till 5 a.m. and it would be fine because, I knew that all I had to do was do my few university lectures and the assignment and that was it. And just like do the casual job that I was doing on the side. There was nothing that was really holding me more accountable than that. Whereas now it's like, all right, you're a working motherfucker now. Like you need to like actually have your shit together and be a bit more intentional with your actions. So when we do mention things like going out on the weekend for birthdays and, having a few extra drinks or whatever, that's okay as long as we're more intentional with our mindset towards it, which I feel like we are. And I think we are even more so because of our mates around us, which is a point I love coming back to because I think we've got a really supportive group of mates that are kind of in like a similar mindset. Like we know when enough's enough. And we know when to like let loose and enjoy ourselves as well within reason. And there's nothing more important than that, is like having those people around you to keep you in the right direction and steer you in that right direction. Because sometimes we might have a tendency to have a bit of like a screw it, let's do it type mentality where we're 24. Like, why are we stressing so much about this? But, as we are getting older, the cost benefit analysis for everything starts to arise a little bit more. So it's good that we're a little bit more intentional with our actions now. And I think it's really driven by the people that you surround yourself with, which is great. Next point I wanted to ask you about is, we've obviously spoken about this from like a male dominated perspective. A lot of this does obviously cross over to females, that want to be, quite set on their careers by the age of 30 and, marriage and relationships and kids and all of that. But do you think there are differences between how we're looking at it as guys versus how girls might look at it?
Yeah, I think girls mature quicker than guys, just generally speaking. I think brains develop much quicker, especially like the higher order thinking, the prefrontal cortex. All those areas of the brain tend to mature way quicker for females relative to males. But I think there's also another element of that, which is biologically, it's the expiration clock on having kids. You want to have kids as young as you can, really. But in today's day and age with, the ability of career progression for women, that takes a bit of a backseat. Having to balance that also with...
contraceptives.
And contraceptives for sure. But I think knowing that you're on a bit of a biological clock as a girl, and look, I'm not a girl, so if there's anyone who disagrees with me, feel free to share your opinion. You're going to be more likely to feel that pressure and you're going to want to lock down someone much quicker because that pressure is on you. It's that clock telling you we should probably get married. Thing is, before you get married, you're going to be with them for let's say 2-3 years, maybe longer. So you need to develop that foundation. You got to get engaged, you got to get married. Balance that with a career as well. It's a lot of things you got to manage. And then you want to time it such that you can have kids before it's too late, before the complications of having a pregnancy are increased, right? So I think for girls, it's naturally always going to be a bit higher. It is higher. It's also the pressure arises for guys, but I think girls are a bit more in that unfavorable position because it's an uncomfortable feeling knowing that everything, you have to be way more selective with who you sleep with. Or rather not who you sleep with, but more so who you decide to spend time with. I think as guys, there's a massive culture of, you're happy to date around, you're happy to just sleep around, but we don't
have a biological clock to the same extent.
Yeah, it catches up with guys, I think, a bit later. Obviously, as a guy, you don't want to have kids too late, but, as a guy, you can afford to have a kid when you're 40. As a girl, it's much harder to have a child when you're 40, right?
Yeah.
So you can already see that there's going to be some sort of biological imperative to have kids earlier. And that has implications for everything, as I said. You're going to try and find a good mate. But the truth of the matter is there's another element to it, which is the good ones get taken away early, right? The guy with a good career, the guy with a good income, a guy who's got a great personality, everything going for them. Same with a girl with a great career, a girl with a great income, a girl with a great personality. They're going to be snagged early. And I think that's why the pressure of your late 20s can come up as well, which is like, fuck, if I don't find someone in the next 5-6 years, am I going to be left out of the dating pool? Does that mean I'm going to end up with no one, no kids, no family? And for some, that's a really scary thought. And for others, they embrace it. They say, who cares? I want to be comfortable with myself. I don't want to have kids. So everyone's different. And yes, everyone's got different timelines. But I'd say for the vast majority of individuals, they understand that the good ones get taken early.
Yeah, listening to this, I'm sure like a lot of you, like me, like I'm sitting here now thinking in my own mind, like far out, like this sounds a bit like daunting to listen to, like thinking that like the fact that I need to have this all kind of like sorted in a way in the next like 5-6 years. That's a daunting thing. It sounds overwhelming. But with that being said, I feel like it's actually okay to have that daunting sense and that daunting feeling, because like we spoke about earlier, it puts that fire under the bum. It makes us feel that pressure to therefore go out into the world and do something for it and forge your pathway so that you're not left with regrets at the end of the day. Because I think that's the key point here is, are you going to be doing actions now that you are going to regret, or are you going to be doing actions and have the mindset of, you know what, I've tried to give things a crack here. Yeah, they might not be working out, but I'm trying. And I would much rather have that. I'd much rather be able to sleep at night, and I would be able to healthily sleep at night knowing that like I'm giving things a go versus I'm not giving things a go and then just complaining about it. And I think generally the people that do complain and freak out way more than others about all this stuff that we're talking about are the ones that have maybe been inactive and aren't thinking about these things and are just brushing them off to the side, or are thinking about these things but aren't doing anything for it.
Can I be a bit vulnerable with you?
Yeah.
Something that really scares me about this at my current point in life is I feel like I haven't traveled enough. And I'm really trying to be intentional with that for the next few years of my life. But what scares me most is, will I have the ability to travel? Will I have the funds to travel in the next few years? Because obviously there's as you said, there's a more bigger cost benefit analysis to every action I take. So, I need to be way more conscious of, for example, where I put my money, because I said to you, like by the time I'm 28, 29, I would love to be in a position where I could potentially have worked already 3-4 years and have enough money to potentially put down a deposit. Might be a bit of an impossible task with the housing market and so forth, but that's something that's on my mind. But then again, I don't want to piss away my 20s and not do the things that I wish I could do. I don't want to get to 40s and 50s and be like, yeah, I'm really glad I hunkered down and bought that house and, had that stability, but then be like, fuck, I really wish I had a bit more fun. I look at my friends who've traveled, who've done these amazing experiences, and I just regret not doing that. I get scared about that. Like, if I'm being completely honest with you, that is something that freaks me out, because the last thing I want to do is have lived a life that wasn't true to myself. And I think that that's my biggest fear right now, is being able to balance the things I still want to do in my 20s that I feel like I haven't been able to complete just yet, with still setting up my life going forward.
Yeah. And yeah, bro, I appreciate you sharing that with us. And I think that's so relatable to a lot of people listening. I think, yeah, in that domain, it's like you said, it's that balance of wanting to do a lot of different things by certain ages. And I think that's completely fair. And what I think is beautiful though in your mentality towards it is that, like I've just said, you're actually trying to like actualize something here. You're trying to be active in your response to it. Like, you've got that fear and you don't want to have those regrets. So you're aware of it. One, you're recognizing it, and now you're putting in the actions to make it happen so that you don't hit the pillow at night and have these regrets that you didn't do that. And I think, for you guys listening that might have these similar thoughts, let's say it's about career, for example. If you're 23, 24 and still don't really know what it is you want to do, that's okay. But it's only okay until you stop trying to do things. And that's I think really true, is that no one's going to feel like supportive of you if you're actually not giving things a go. If you're just sitting around scrolling and complaining that you don't really know what you want to do yet, and you're not giving it a go, you're not actually trying new things, reaching out to people, trying new tasks, new hobbies, different career avenues, networking with people. If you're not putting in the action, then people aren't going to be supportive of you, and you've only got yourself to blame. And that is the harsh truth of it. So I think you just got to get out there, try things. And if you're still not having luck, try again. Something will stick at the end of the day. I don't think anyone's gone through life without having some likes and some dislikes. There'll be something that you'll like. It's just about trying new things.
There is nothing wrong with not knowing what you want to do.
For sure.
But what there is something wrong with is not making the active effort to find out what you do in fact want to do. And the thing is, it is a matter of throwing as much shit to a wall and seeing what sticks. It's also a matter of just picking a direction and going there. So there's this whole thing of, I have to get from A to B, and B is going to be my desired purpose in life. It's going to be what I want to devote my skills to. It's what I want to, be my money-making machine. At the same time, though, you don't know where to course correct if you haven't even left the origin. And the best thing you can do is at least start somewhere and just work. Even if you don't think it's where you want to be, it's so much easier to course correct than spend all your nights thinking about where is the right start point. Just try it out. And the thing is, you and I are fortunate because we, I guess, found out quite young what we want to do. But there might be a reality in 3-4 years where you get really sick of physiotherapy, and you might not want to do physio. And that might be a reality in my life where, sure, I'm doing psychology. I haven't even started placements. But what happens in 2 years if I don't I don't want to be a psychologist? I think I want to be a psychologist right now, just like you think you want to devote your life to physio. But what I take comfort in is knowing that I'll be able to course correct, and you're going to be able to course correct, because you're not going to be able to you're not going to let yourself just be unhappy with something if that situation arose.
I also think on that note, aside from the course correcting, it's easier said than done when we're not in that state of far out, I actually don't want to do this anymore. But I also think that what will make us sleep better at night, if that does happen, is the thought of knowing that we did give it a crack. And that's what you were saying just before, is that when you do leave the origin to get to that destination, you actually have to drive a fair way on the highway first before veering off and taking a side street. You shouldn't just start something without giving it a crack. Give things a fair crack first, so that you can say wholeheartedly you gave it a crack and you don't like it before giving up on it.
Well, it's all trial and error, right? And you don't know what you like until you've tried it. And you don't know what you don't like until you've tried it. And I think there's going to be so many times in life where you have to play this trial and error game to see what you like and don't like. It doesn't even have to be with career. It could be with things like hobbies. And hobbies don't necessarily need to be a money-making machine. Hobbies, all they can be are things that keep you happy and healthy. And the truth of the matter is, that's going to be life for you. I don't think there's ever going to be a point where you're like, fuck, I've made it. It's always going to be course correction, start again, retry. Progress isn't going to be linear.
Absolutely. Mate, on that note, thanks for chatting about this, and thanks for being vulnerable. And I know I certainly feel a lot more content after, this podcast and our chat we had about it with Sterling the other night as well. Talking about it more is making me feel a lot more content with the direction we're going on. And, feel like if you guys are listening and feel kind of similar to how we're feeling, talk about it with your mates around you as well. And no doubt you'll feel better for it as well. So on that note, if you've liked what we've spoken about today, share us, let us know. And we can't wait to see you on the next one.
See ya.
Bye.